If they go down this road, it's going to be a lot of fun to tie up their knickers in a twist on the legal issues. On the hearsay evidence, litigated to death. On the coerced evidence, you bet. On the question of the undue command influence, the president is going to find himself exactly in the position. Josh is the one who educated me this. You can tell I'm a pretty good student. I retained some of this. When the commander-in-chief says these people are guilty and should be put to death, he can say that in an ordinary Article III criminal court context because judges have lifetime tenure and they don't have to listen to what the president says. A lot of them do, like the Supreme Court. But ideally, and the way it's supposed to work, is that you have an objective third branch of government that can say, the president might think they're guilty, but I, Your Honor, Judge blank, don't have to follow that. In the military context, you have this thing about the commander-in-chief is the boss of everyone down the line in the military. And so the question is, by Obama and Secretary of State and Secretary Holder having said these guys are guilty, you're going to be able to lay a lot more gloves on this president, which were the motions that Josh and his folks filed on the undue command influence. They're going to find themselves exactly in that same legal morass. It will take a lot of time. So guess what? You're going to be running for office in 2 years, right? You're going to be running for office in 2 years, Mr. Obama, if I were speaking to him, which I'll tell you about that in a second. And you're not going to have convictions on these cases. You will have shown that in fact, you didn't do any better. There'll be increased pressure from the 9/11 family members when they haven't rendered justice for their family members. It's a complete mistake to not use the criminal courts that are the quickest, easiest, and most sure way to get a conviction. Finally, I love the optics of this. I mean, the idea, you're right, Mo, if I can call you that. You're right that there's so much evidence, from what I hear, I haven't seen the evidence, that there's so much evidence on some of these high-value detainees that you don't have to use the evidence gleaned from torture to convict them. But when you're in a DOD context, when the adjudicator of guilt is the very same administration, same agency that perpetrated the torture, boy, are you giving us a place to litigate the torture issue. Whereas in criminal courts, a good judge would say, that's irrelevant. That evidence wasn't gleaned from torture. Who cares if your client was waterboarded? But when you're in the military commissions under DOD with some of the same people who possibly were involved in the torture, you'll have a lot more fun. I say this, in the realpolitik, if I were talking directly with the president, and which I've talked once, but not on this issue, it's been quite interesting. I only got the week leading up to the big press release, we were scrambling to get all the people who were so nice to me and invited me to the White House the first time around and gave me their phone numbers and their cell phones and their business cards, and we want to hear from you. And when we heard the rumors that they were going to switch to military commissions, we tried to activate the behind-the-scenes channel. Not a phone call, DOJ or White House. Where I got phone calls back, ironically, was from DOD and the FBI. Go figure. And so the only way we knew, from folks who talked to us, we knew that the decision was being made at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And when you don't get the hearing of the White House, you kind of have to scream. And that's when we ran this full-page New York Times ad that said, "What will it be, Mr. President? Change or more of the same?" That was admittedly provocative and very cutting edge and created a lot of debate within the ACLU whether we were being too hard, with a picture of Obama on one side morphing into Bush on the other, where one picture then has Bush's eyebrows, and then it has Bush's nose, and then it has Bush's shape of his head, and you can see the progressive the transition to it. And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this is too rough." It was too rough. It's a question. It wasn't a statement. So what will it be? So we tried to be respectful. And it was only Monday morning that we got the call back from the West Wing. Then we spent an hour and a half with them, talking them through the realpolitik and why this would be a Faustian bargain. And frankly, what we were able to say to them, look, what do you want to really accomplish in these trials? You want a speedy conviction. Get this over and done with. You want to put this albatross that you inherited off of your neck. You want to do it under established rules that have legitimacy, right? Where no one's going to be able to poke at how you got the job done. You want to seek an execution, but do you really want to execute? You want to make these jihadi poster boys? I understand why you might want to say you're seeking the death penalty, but is that really the best public policy decision in terms of relationships with the Muslim world? And if you back into it that way, you have many more opportunities about venue and using criminal courts that don't limit you in the way that they seem to now be limited. I say ultimately the reason why the military commissions, Mo, would be an enormous mistake, just as a rejoinder, it's going to be the exception that eats up the rule, meaning the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. Because I also, not given to prognostication, I know that these types of situations will turn up in organized crime, gangs, the drug war, and we've seen it with the Patriot Act. I mean, this was something that I can point to explicit proof. You look at the annual report put out by Department of Justice on how the Patriot Act powers were used, right in the aftermath of 9/11, 1 month after the attacks of 9/11. It's used on lottery crimes, embezzlement, people who were extorting the elderly, environmental terrorism, immigration. And I guarantee you that if you allow a context where you can convict individuals with hearsay evidence, with coerced evidence, you can hold individuals preventatively without charges or trial, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where that exception becomes the rule of law and eats up what are very clear barriers for due process in the Fourth and Fifth Amendments that will do enormous damage for the country. That's why this issue is of such high importance for us. People keep saying to me, I'll wrap up with this, why do you spend so much time focusing on these 200 individuals? I just got this question at lunch. You have 2 million people in jail, and we litigate the conditions of confinement in U.S. prisons. But the reason why we have sunk $3.5 million into this project, the John Adams Project, which Josh was the architect of, to bring the best of the best in terms of criminal defense lawyers to supplement the good men and women in the uniform, the JAG lawyers, is to ensure that if you lose this game, you lose a lot more than just 200 cases or clients. The implications for us going forward are not to be underestimated. And that's why, frankly, the idea that we're dealing with potentially carving out enormous exceptions in our established justice system because of the realpolitik of Washington is just incredibly frightening, and why the questions and comments from across the political spectrum have to be as loud and as vociferous as possible, regardless of where we end up. So thanks very much.